Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode, no idea, as usual, flying my pants in the wind, recording as and when we can get the amazing guests. I have a guest today. She is an amazing athlete. She has abs and everything, far better abs than I do. They're currently hiding under the winter warmer, which needs to be done when I play rugby, otherwise it just really hurts. Hello, Emma Storey-Gordon.
Hello, Ben Coomber.
Very well spoken.
Did you expect a Scottish accent?
Yeah, it feels like there's a little bit hiding in there.
Yeah, some people say that. I think English people can hear the Scottish, and Scottish people can hear the English.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. It's hiding, and when you go back home, does it boil over and get really?
Well, no, not really, because I'm living at home now, and it's not boiling over. I think some people get a little bit upset about they were expecting a nice little Scottish girl and they have a pretty bland accent, but
don't call the British accent bland.
I'm very well spoken, we'll say that.
Yeah, it's because I started the podcast very well spoken, and as it goes on, we'll descend into drool and abuse and swearing and stuff, so it's fine.
Oh, brilliant.
So, for anyone that's listening, doesn't know who you are, hasn't heard of your name before, who are you? What do you do?
So I am 22 years old. I graduated from Edinburgh Uni last year. I studied sports science, and then I'm in a strange situation, I guess, where I'm sort of trying to find out what I want to do in my life. Yeah, so I did a bit of personal training. I enjoy personal training, but the sort of one-on-one everyday clients wasn't really for me, and so I'm probably going to go back and study a PhD. But about 5 minutes ago, I just got my third rejection, so we're going to see what happens there. So I'm just feeling really good about myself at the moment. Yeah, positive attitude and everything.
Well, sometimes the best things come out of rejection.
Sometimes, Ben. Sometimes.
Sometimes. Like, how many times did J.K. Rowling get declined for her book? Look at that girl. She's sitting on a massive pile of cash now.
So, yeah.
So,
yeah.
You're looking to do the PhD, that kind of stuff. What are you doing right now? You're in the fitness industry. You're obviously actively doing stuff, because obviously we're going to be talking about some health and fitness stuff today. So give people an insight into what you're doing within that realm at the moment.
At the moment, I work with quite a few online clients, and I'm really interested in sort of special populations. So I guess type 2 diabetics, and sarcopenia, so muscle wastage.
Yeah.
And I don't know, some people find it quite strange that I'm interested in those, but I think it's because they're such extremes. So it's type 2 diabetes is the extreme of carbohydrate metabolism, and sarcopenia is like the extreme of muscle wastage. Sarcopenia, by the way, is muscle wastage, effectively, loss of strength with age, and muscle mass.
Before I move into my what was going to be my next question, you've kind of spurred a little bit of thought, especially with sarcopenia, because there's obviously a certain population that we see sarcopenia in. It's usually people that are a lot older, they don't really exercise. If you're obviously looking at this in certain populations, do you think this is happening younger and younger with individuals, because there's a certain chunk of the population that are not very active and never really support their muscle mass? So is that kind of bracket where the onset usually happens, is it kind of basically happening earlier?
I mean, I haven't looked into detail of that. I'd expect probably. In some ways, I'd see it's quite similar to osteoporosis. So if you never reach a high bone mineral density, if you never weight train and increase that bone mineral density, when it does start to deplete and you get osteoporosis, if you do, you're in a worse position. It's the same as if you started with a large amount of muscle mass, you were very active, the effects of sarcopenia are going to be reduced. Whereas if you have no muscle mass to start with and then it's wasting away, you become weak very quickly and you get a lot of problems very quickly. So in that sense, yeah, as we become less and less active as a population, these problems are becoming more prominent. But also the fact that we're living longer as well. So
sure. I just think that you know, this isn't a population that I've coached hugely just because of my angle, who I enjoy coaching, and kind of my demographic. But especially kind of like young to middle-aged girls, is obviously there's a certain group of people that have better and stronger genetics, and they don't tend to put on weight easily. They maintain their weight. They might eat a huge amount of junk food. It never really has a deleterious effect. And then there's a point in their life where they've obviously noticed a decline. It's got to a point where, you know, they kind of might have been an 8 or a 10 all their life, and they're now like a 12 or a 14. And as well as putting on this weight, there seems to have been like a body composition shift over time, that you look at these young women and you're like, I can tell that there used to be more muscle mass there, but because they've literally just not used it, although there's still like a size 12 or a 14, there's been a huge body composition shift, and you actually test their body fat percentage, it's actually really high. They're actually really skinny fat. And
yeah,
that's kind of, yeah, and I think that's where my thought process is coming in with this kind of sarcopenia. I mean, we can't call it sarcopenia because there's obviously a certain point where we kind of bracket that, but they seem to have very low muscle mass despite being of a small size, but very high body fat percentage.
Mm. Yeah, and I guess really that's just inactivity levels, I'd say, in that age group. But yeah, there always seems to be a point where like you're getting away with it, you know, you turn 25 or whatever, and then it's all downhill from there, so they say.
Apparently, mate, I'm gonna maybe start that downhill process at like 70. I'm gonna be bulletproof into old age. I'm sure you will as well. Oh, you're sipping tea. What tea are you drinking?
Okay, I had this discussion with a friend who was like, have you ever tried this new tea? It's called Rooibos, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, is it Red Bush? And he's like, no, Rooibos. Like, this is how you say it, Rooibos. Anyway, it turns out it is Red Bush. So yeah, apparently that's how the Afrikaans say it, which is cooler.
It is. Yeah. But neither of us are Afrikaans, so we just have to wing it. And
yeah, so I'm going to stick with Red Bush.
Yeah, that's easier. Red Bush is good. I like it. I recommend it to a lot of people because it's non-caffeinated. While we're on the subject of teas, I've now got blackcurrant and vanilla. Just a huge fan, you know, a little fruitiness. What other teas are you a big fan of?
I've got to say, I always find fruit teas are a bit disappointing because they smell brilliant. And you're like, oh, blackcurrant and vanilla.
Very true.
Can't wait.
Yeah,
this is going to be a taste sensation. And
I just double bag it.
Double bag it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I might be not brewing it long enough. I'm pretty impatient with the brewing.
I just leave the tea bag in.
Oh.
Why wouldn't you leave the tea bag in?
Well, if you're going to add milk, you cannot possibly leave the tea bag in.
You don't add milk to a blackcurrant and vanilla tea.
Okay. For that one, I'll accept that. But tea bag with milk, sick.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like when people put milk in before they take the tea bag out, like they put it all in at the bottom. No, what is with that?
No. Other teas I like. I've tried a few green teas recently. I tried the new salted caramel green tea, which I was pretty big fan of that. And then your standard everyday tea, I've got to say, can't really go wrong.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I love a good English brew. I was at the Twinings HQ the week they were launching the new flavours, which was salted caramel.
Yeah.
I think it's like caramelised apple or something.
Yeah, I've not tried that.
There's another one I can't remember. Anyway, I was
gingerbread.
Gingerbread man, that's it. I was at the HQ doing all the staff's wellbeing day training. They all came in and I did a seminar and did one-to-ones and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, the amount of teas that company has, it is insane. But again, it's the same thing. The teas smell amazing. And don't get me wrong, they're nice, but they're just never quite like the smell.
It isn't.
And this is where we need a little bit more Willy Wonka, right? We need that magic in the tea.
This is true.
Right, anyway.
There's a new business venture.
Yeah, it is. We're hugely digressing. Let's move back onto this fitness chat stuff. You're kind of being 22, very young in the industry, and having just finished your degree. Was there anything different that kind of got you into your fitness path, or was it kind of like you were good at sport at school and it kind of gravitated into a sports science? What was the deal?
Yeah, well, if I'm totally honest, I've never really known what I want to do. Still don't. But I finished school and I had, good enough grades to go to uni, and it was sort of always expected of me to go to uni. So I was like, oh, I like sport. I'll just do sports science. And to be honest, in the first year or two, I wasn't really that interested. I did the bare minimum, like most students do. Like, I just went to the lectures and did that. But then in third and fourth year, I started really getting interested in the research and doing extra research. And I probably read 10 times more papers than I ever did at uni, like the year after uni, because I've just been much more interested in it. So yeah, it just sort of developed from that, from being sporty, I guess.
Nice. And in terms of having done your degree, have you done any courses outside your degree course? Because I'm assuming you must get a lot of messages and emails and stuff from people saying, Emma, what courses do you recommend as kind of an aspiring PT?
Yeah, I haven't done very much. I mean, I've done my level 2 gym instructor, I've done my level 3 personal trainer. But in terms of sort of specific nutrition or physiology, I haven't done any outside courses apart from uni. But I think what you really learn at university, or the most valuable thing I learned, was how to read a paper and how to critique it and how to find that information. And if I hadn't been at uni, I'd really struggled to find, where do you read this information? Like, every blog post you write is every blog post you read, is someone's interpretation of what they've read.
Yeah.
And really, you're not getting to the bottom of it until you get to, the paper, and you can use your skills to critique it yourself and read a few papers and maybe read someone's opinion on it, but form your own opinion as well. And it's not as easy as just going on a course, unfortunately. But I do get a lot of questions, and I always feel a bit, just go to PubMed and start reading loads, and it's hard to start with, and you kind of like, I have to Google every other word because I don't know what these mean. But I tend to say, if you start with a review on the topic, or a meta-analysis or some kind of reviews are normally a good place to start, and then from that review, you might find a few papers that highlight interesting points you're interested in, and then you can go and look at them, and it sort of spans from there normally.
I think it depends as well what your path is and why you kind of learn things. Now, for example, if you want to specialize in nutrition and you want to do like online coaching, maybe looking at certain populations, you need to be very specific with your learning. You need to know what the research says. You need to know the biochemistry behind why all these conditions are happening. But if you're just a personal trainer in a gym, a course is very important because you need applicable and applicable information very quickly to get the kind of best out your clients. So I think there's obviously definitely a path of best course, to say, right, because I always say to people, look, you've got to be insured, right? Go do your level 2, go do your level 3, then find people that you really respect, right? Find out if he does a course, go on it. Find out if he does a course, get a few different people's opinions, start gelling all the ideas, but importantly, kind of stop there. Then go away, work on all that stuff with your clients, like start seeing trends and see what works, that kind of stuff. And then, this stuff works, why? And then you can start to dip into like the research, because, at that point, and you got to find where your interest lies as well. Because if you just jump onto, Google Scholar or whatever, where do you start?
Oh, exactly. Yeah, it's very overwhelming. I mean, you make good points, like, you can't underestimate practical experience, and if something was working with a client and I had no idea why, like, me being a geek, it would really annoy me, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to do it with other clients. Like, if I don't understand necessarily why something's happening in the body, or I'm just getting good results, even though the science might say I shouldn't do it that way, something's working, and there's so many angles to it as well. It's not just biochemistry, physiology. Like, what works is, it's mainly sort of psychology, like how you can stick to a diet, how you can get someone to change their behaviors and stick to that. I mean, I'll completely put my hands up and say that a lot of the stuff I post on my Facebook and stuff is purely just because I've been reading it and I'm a bit of a geek, but it has no practical application for a lot of people. Yeah.
So I don't think we've really mentioned this, but if there's people listening to this podcast right now, and they're like, do you know what? I think I'm at a point where I'd like to explore some specific areas within the science. What advice would you give to people if they were going to look at a paper to say, right, give them like 3 or 4 tips to say, this is what you need to look out for. This is what you need to try and understand to actually extract that information from a journal to get the information you need and to be able to critique it properly.
Number 1, try and get the full journal, because reading the abstract is, or even the title, as some people seem to do, is not adequate. There are people that have like these, so anyone at uni is going to probably have access to a lot of the journals, so you can even just send them a link and bug them for that. Start with a review, because it's not, or what I tend to do sometimes if I don't know a topic is just they normally start with like a sort of background introduction, so you could read a few of those on a certain topic. Things to look out for, I guess, is how they've controlled for certain aspects. So especially in like nutritional research, like, are the calories equal? Have they used like food tracking? Have they you want to obviously get things as equal as possible so you can compare results between groups. The sample size, like in sports science research, there's always going to be a pretty small sample size due to funding and things. So that's why it's sort of more popular that people look at association data, because you can easily do bigger samples with that cohort, or say mice studies and things like that, purely for like ethical approval reasons. I mean, nutritional research has a long way to go, mainly because we just can't study, like people won't stick to the diets, you can't do it over a long time, don't have the funding, don't have the resources. But I guess what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way is try and point out the limitations, but it's easy to critique a study. You can, and it's been a lot of hard work for the scientists doing it, and normally they will, in a sort of limitations section, discuss the limitations of the study and say, it's indicating this, but we don't know because X, Y, and Z. However, like, I guess the real skill is taking from that study what we think might be happening, as opposed to just critiquing it and dismissing it because they had it controlled for one certain factor. I guess
and I suppose that's why it's really important to look at 3, 4, 5, 6 studies that are available on a topic area and kind of match up the limitations. It's like, well, that didn't account for that, but this one has, and they didn't account for that, and then you draw all the dots. And there's arguments online about this all the time. If you've got an opinion, Emma, you can go online, you can find one study that has a certain finding and support your argument, and I could probably find another, but it's only until you actually start to read around the topic that we get a greater understanding of it.
I know, and it's, in a way, those sort of internet arguments are really beneficial, because you're like, oh, here's both sides of the argument, and even though it's often done in quite like a egotistical way, like, yeah, you can't say that because that's just a rat study and wouldn't be the same in humans and blah blah blah, but it's the only available data we have and it indicates this, then it's still valid, and we should look at the limitations of it, but it has a place. But yeah, there are benefits to these internet ramblings. People seem to have a lot of time to look for papers, and saves me time sometimes.
Right, let's move on. We are both speaking at SFN Expo this year, which is it's very cool. I'm very excited. It's the first time that they've done it, and I think it's going to be awesome. Do you have any idea what you're talking about yet?
I've got a few ideas, but I've not sort of started putting together a proper plan yet.
Oh, I haven't put together a plan.
Oh, well.
I'm just like, the title's there and the idea's there, and we'll see what happens on the day.
Yeah. No, I'm a bit more nervous than that about it. So I am gonna plan it pretty well, I think.
So
but yeah, I've got a few basic ideas. I'm just gonna read around a bit, and then a bit closer to the time, we'll see where my interests lie and what I want to chat about, and then hopefully chat to all you guys as well, because I don't want to be boring them with the same stuff.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you now, my topics on day one, I'm doing a very similar talk that I did at Body Power last year, which is the bodybuilding diet dead? So looking at kind of the old methodology of thinking and how our opinions and the science has moved on to say, well, actually, that's not really true, and is that a better way of doing things? You know, and obviously blending the anecdotal and the scientific, you know, kind of thought process. And then the second day is your diet killing your progress? And I'm kind of going to look at all the small things that people do in their diet and their training history that actually might have a really big effect on the outcome of body composition long term. So maybe looking at some sleep variables, how all the different interactions of stress can affect the body, that kind of stuff.
Okay. So, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm just going to write some notes. Those topics sound interesting. No, that sounds good, yeah. I'm going to keep mine under wraps, partly because I just haven't quite decided.
Yeah, that's fine. Right. I think a lot of your kind of online profile and persona is definitely centered around your like sponsorship with USN. Your people see you as quite a training focused individual, and I reckon people want an insight with that. How do you structure your training, and I suppose what are your training goals? You know, what do you do and why?
Okay, so they've changed a lot over the years because when I was first sponsored by USN, I was rowing. So I was doing rowing at uni. So obviously my goals then were to row as fast as possible, strength goals, endurance goals. Ironically, I'd say I was doing a lot of cardio work, obviously, because rowing is a predominantly endurance sport. And it was the heaviest I've ever been. So there you go. But after I stopped rowing, I guess it's just been, to be honest, I just like having fun in the gym now. I've had a pretty bad back injury, which is why I stopped rowing. So now I just sort of work around that and do what I can. And I'm trying to increase my strength a bit, like mostly upper body things, because like I'll do legs and I'll do squats, but it's never exciting. It's just getting it done, getting the stimulus there. Yeah, and at the moment trying to put on a bit of size. So it's, to be honest, it's mostly nutrition. The training stays pretty similar. I do like a good hard circuit, and then quite like a bit of a meathead bodybuilder split type thing as well. So
how many days a week will you tend to train?
I will train probably 6 days a week, mainly because I just love it. I just love going, and I always try and I make myself have a rest day.
Yeah, if I was your coach, I'd make you have a rest day as well.
Yeah, I know, but I'm so like most of my clients will only train maybe 4 days a week or something, you know, have substantial rest days. But yeah,
basically you're just hardcore.
Pretty much, yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Basically, I know it's probably not optimal, but I like going.
Fair enough, mate. I don't think there's anything wrong with training high volume, training frequently. People talk about overtraining. My primary argument would be it's under recovery. Like exactly. If you're eating enough, you're getting the right micro and macronutrients, you're getting the right rest, your sleep is good and it's consistently deep. You know, and I think tying into that, and especially through some personal experimentation recently, I think mental stress also plays hugely into this. Like, if you can compartmentalize your day, if your mental stress is very low, your emotional stress is very low, I think you can actually handle a really high physical training load, stress-wise on the body. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think it definitely. I mean, everything plays a part. I heard a little sound bite the other day which I stole, and it was like, stress your body to de-stress your mind or something. And although I think it can work either way, like sometimes I will have had yesterday I had a pretty rubbish day, I was feeling a bit down, and I just needed like headphones in, pick up some heavy weights, just, you know, do what I got to do. getting out, had an awesome session. But other days, you know, when you're feeling down, like sometimes you just can't, like you just need a day off the gym, you need to chill out. And so I think it can work both ways. But I think in the long term, sort of chronic stress of, I don't know, being a PT in London or something, that can play a huge role in potentially overtraining, or, you know, if you're not recovering well enough.
Definitely. Okay. I put a little shout out on Facebook to ask, pose a few questions to you, and I got a couple back, so I'm going to shoot them straight at you. Jennifer Bulcock says, does Emma manipulate macros/nutrition to suit hormonal fluctuations with the female cycle, and if so, how?
Okay. I'm going to say, to start with, what is his name? Jonathan, I think it's Mama or something. But anyway, Jennifer, I will link you this. But he's written, so far, one article has been published on Girls Gone Strong. If you don't follow that, you should follow that on Facebook. And it's about the menstrual cycle. He's going to do 3 articles, and we're going to do a little podcast on it as well. So that's going to give more information. But personally, I tend to have 1 or 2 days off because I get pretty sore stomach. And it's normally an excuse for me to just look after myself a little bit. I never do, you know, if I'm a little bit tired, I'm going to the gym anyway. Like I like training 6 days a week. I feel a bit bad if I don't go sometimes, but it makes me slow down. So I'm like, right, you need to take a few days off. You need to start eating, you know, maybe I'd up my calories a little bit. And I mean, iron levels are always important at that time of the month. And I don't know how much of an effect this really has, but I always try and have a steak purely for the iron levels, not for enjoyment. But yeah, like have a steak, have a night off the gym. But again, it affects people in different ways. Like I used to have a training partner who literally couldn't train for the week during her menstrual cycle and was just in pain the whole time.
Wow.
And obviously, if that's an issue, maybe think of going on the contraceptive pill. But yeah, I just sort of accept it and embrace it and say, you know, I've worked hard all month. Either sort of structure a deload week that week, or have a lighter session, or just have a day off. That would be my advice, I think. In terms of macros, because I'm not very strict with my macros and don't follow an exact protocol, I don't manipulate them depending on my period time or anything. But I would say one of the interesting things, which I didn't realise, which was written in the Girls Gone Strong article, was that you actually burn a lot more energy during your menstrual cycle, or just before, I think. So I think it was as much as 200 calories a day. So I quite like that fact, because it gives you the little, I'm craving a bit of chocolate, but I shouldn't, you know, if you're dieting. But really, if you're burning through thermogenesis an extra 100, 200 calories a day, you can afford to have that little bit of extra chocolate. And I just say really look after yourself for a day.
Yeah, definitely. Did he mention in his articles about any upregulation of glycolysis in the build up to the period, so the follicular cycle?
Not that I'm aware of, but he's going into more detail in the next.
Nice, because I would. There seems to be an upregulation of glycolysis, and that tends to be why there's a link towards people getting increased cravings for carbohydrates and sweet stuff. So I'm of the thought process that if the body's going through this length of time, I was about to say period, it's probably the wrong word to use there, this length of time where there's a craving, perhaps there's a deep physiological signal that's starting to say something. So there's an indication that we could be preferentially going towards glycolysis a bit more, and the body is essentially craving a bit more carbohydrate. So there's a thought process to say, well, actually, like you're saying, there's a greater caloric need, but perhaps there's also a greater need for carbohydrates as well. Yeah. And that the macronutrients might just shift that way during that length of time.
I mean, yeah, and as with anything, like it's what works for you. and all that. But yeah, and if you, I mean, yeah, I don't want to get off topic, but if you're training ridiculously hard and you're not menstruating, then that's something else to. Obviously, macros need to change then, and training load needs to reduce.
Yeah, and that's a big problem. And we've had questions previously on the podcast where, you know, people have said this, they've said how much they're training, they're trying to do fasting and spinning and all this crazy stuff, and I'm like, man, you need to step back, you need to up your calories, you need to allow for some homeostasis to occur, you need to rebalance and get a grip.
But I mean, it's your body telling you that it's not strong enough to have a baby. It's just a really good sign that you're pushing it a little bit too far. Because, yeah.
Oh, 100%. So, 2 more questions. Tom Kendall says, thoughts on feeding, training versus day off recovery. I found I'm hungrier on off days.
I find the same, because I think it's purely because you have more time. So, you know, if you're structuring your nutrition a bit around your training and stuff, you're like, oh, there's my pre-workout meal, my post-workout meal, you've got this hour to 2 hours where you're training or driving to the gym or whatever. If you've got a day where you're not training at all, you tend to have a bit more time, and I think it does give you the opportunity to eat more. In terms of obviously context, like if you're bulking up, or then this is a good thing. It gives you a chance to refuel. If not, then I mean, I always recommend you want to fuel your workout. So if you're not training, you might want to reduce your carbs if you're carb cycling. However, saying that, I think people are too sort of short term in their approach. You know, the timing of your carbohydrate intake isn't. If you eat a lot of carbs the day before, they're not just going to disappear overnight. Yeah, you wake up in a faster state. You know, you might have slightly depleted carb stores, but if you've not worked your muscles, the glycogen's not just going to disappear. So I'd say if you prefer eating, you know, if you want to have your refuel meal or your whatever on your off day, then go for it. I don't think it's going to be a big issue. I know a lot of people like to have their refuel meal on leg day because they feel they've got more energy for leg day that day. If that works for you, do it. If you'd rather have it the day before leg day and you've got a whole load of energy the next day, that could work as well.
Exactly. And ultimately, it's about performance. If you're getting optimal performance and what you're doing is working, and I think too many people will readily read what someone else is doing and say, oh, that's the right way to do it. It's like I got a couple of questions this morning on Twitter about BCAAs, and people are asking about BCAAs, and I'll go, well, hang on, let's start with the first question. Why do you think you need them, or what is your thought process behind taking them? And then we can expand on the conversation rather than just saying, oh yeah, it might be good, take them here. And it's like with your training, like if something's going well and your body composition is moving favourably, then don't really change it. But I think because the human body or the human mind is such an inquisitive creature, we always want to kind of explore more, we want to think that there's something better or some kind of secret that maybe that we're not happy with just kind of like the basics of what works. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, you'll get a million questions like this as well. It's always just like, hi, should I take protein as a supplement? And I'm like, I don't know, what do you do? Like, what are your goals? What's the context? Do you have enough protein in your diet already? I don't know, like a million questions, but people just seem to think there's one answer to everyone, or bit frustrating to explain that every time.
Well, hopefully,
context.
More people will listen to good podcasts and they'll learn how to do stuff better.
There you go.
Right, last question before we wrap up. I bet you get this question a fair bit. Hannah Sweetman said, how did Emma become a USN sponsored athlete? And how can you get sponsored without competing? So how did you get sponsored? How did it go down?
Do you know what? Kind of funny story. When I finished rowing for I think we had British Unis Championships in May, and then I decided I'd never really dieted. In fact, I'd never really looked at my nutrition or diet at all. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to go on my first diet. And what I did was just completely cut carbohydrates, which wasn't, you know, everyone learns. So I'm just going to put it down to learning. However, I did that, and I did get in decent shape. I got some more visible abs and stuff, and I got my mate to take pictures of me in the gym. And I remember saying to my flatmate, like, yeah, I'm going to get really ripped and then, like, sponsored by a supplement company. Like, and he was like, no, you're not. But, well, and then I came back after the summer and I had, like, been speaking to a few companies. And I went down and met some of the guys at USN. And it sort of just happened from that. Like, literally just a few decent pictures I got taken in the gym. And I know that I was ridiculously lucky because that just doesn't happen. Normally you have to win a competition and have a big profile. And
so did they see these pictures somewhere?
Yeah, I sent them.
Oh, you sent them? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I keep sending my pictures to Men's Health, but they're not biting yet. I'll keep sending them every week.
Yeah, well, I think partly it's sort of having like an online presence as well. I sent them, but Carl, who's the athlete rep at USN, insists that he already had an eye on me, but I'm pretty sure he didn't. But anyway, yeah, I just got really lucky, and I mean the opportunities I've had from it and the travel, and yeah, I'm just so grateful for all of that.
Nice. And I take it you'll be at Body Power, representing them at some point this year, yeah?
Yeah, biggest stand at Body Power, USN.
Pow. Surely every supplement company is going to boast that. We've got the biggest stand. We've got the bestest protein.
But do you have a gym on your stand?
A full-blown gym?
We did last year. I don't know if that's still happening this year, but
that's intense. I do remember the USN stand last year. It was huge. It was very big.
Yeah, it's right as you come in as well. So,
yeah, it is.
So are you presenting? Yeah.
I am, yes.
Good stuff.
And yeah, we'll be doing some cool stuff. Right. Let's wrap up the show. Thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
It has.
All importantly, if people want to follow what you go on about online, where do they go?
They go to www.facebook.com/ESG Fitness, or on Twitter I'm at ESG Fitness. And annoyingly, the timing of this, I don't have my website up and running, but it will be up soon. So I'm sure I will post that all over social media all the time. So you'll be able to find it.
Well, people will listen to this show, over the years, really. So what is your website going to be? And by the time this goes up, or by the time they listen to it, it might be ready.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be www.esgfitness.com.
Why break a trend?
So, yeah. I mean, you'll be able to find it. It's going to be top of Google.
Standard. Nice one. Well, Emma, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks,
I will
Ben.
see you at Body Power.
Yeah.
And I'll come and say hello. And no doubt USN will have some kind of stupid challenge or something. Do they do that kind of stuff? They like come and do like
I'll make a challenge for you, Ben.
Thanks.
I'll make a challenge.
And no doubt someone will be hiding behind you with a GoPro or something. Like, yeah, I know how these things pan out.
Yeah.
All right, then. Take care. Thank you very much for being on the show. And we'll see you at Body Power.
I will do. See you soon.
Ciao. Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 83. Me and Rachel are back. Rachel Guy, transatlantic goddess. How was one?